Good morning.
Good morning, Jay White.
How are you?
Good. You got that music really pumping.
I did. I was like, well, I really want to get this done. So let's just bring them on and we'll worry about the music later. I told Kendra before we had to go live, I was like, oh my gosh, I have been out taking care of animals this morning. And it is so cold. By the time I come in, I look like somebody rouged me.
What animals are you taking care of?
Do what?
I said, what animals are you taking care of?
Well, the sheep are, you have to kind of take care of the sheep, but the ones that are really getting me right now are the ones that see, we have de-icers, in so many of the troughs and the water and all this kind of stuff. We have all of this going on. And if I add any more, we're going to blow a breaker. So I have to go out and actually water some of them. And that's like not the most fun because all the spigots froze. So I'm out there like hauling this, going up to that, walking all the way up to the house, up the hill, filling up the water, walking back down. It's just, I'm not a huge fan of the super freezing temperatures as a farmer. It's just, it's not my fave. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, you do what you can do, but. So anyway, guess what I did yesterday?
Hard telling. It's hard to keep track of Jenny White.
I'm telling you, she's everywhere. She floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee. Sorry, just couldn't help it. I was at the Capitol yesterday live streaming the rally against green energy.
Yeah, I watched that live stream or tried to get what I could. I'm glad you went over there and actually live streamed that.
Yeah, it was I think StreamYard this is the program that we use to stream called StreamYard. I think they did a really great job, but the problem was we kept losing signal until I actually attached it to my phone signal. So I had to get off the Wi-Fi and use the phone signal. And once I did that we were okay. But yeah, I think we got the whole thing.
Well, what are you using? Government Wi-Fi over there at the Capitol?
I sure was, with my VPN off. No telling what they got off my pad.
Oh, they own you now, Jenny.
Like they didn't 5 minutes ago, so I'm not all that worried about it. But I will say there was a great turnout. I mean, it was 5 a.m. I mean, it's been just freaking cold, and we had hundreds of people show up.
Yeah.
I mean, which was just outstanding. So good on all of you who went and got up and did that, because it was great. I will tell you, I'm going to be doing a live this afternoon at 1 p.m. to talk about what happened in the House after everybody left. So the House and Senate had what they call an organizational day. And during that day, they voted on the rules that would sustain the House and Senate individually. I don't even think they got together at the end. And it didn't bode well. Didn't bode well for the upcoming session. Our friend Tom Gann got shut down. Our friend Jim Shaw got shut down. Molly Jenkins actually got an amendment, which was kind of fun, to keep men out of women's bathrooms, which was in the Capitol, which I'm all for. I really don't want to, have to go in with a guy. So I'm good with that. But yeah, it was a bad day, and we probably need to talk about that, because there wasn't not one stick of news media there when this all happened. Pretty much it was just rope report. So I'm happy to tell everybody what happened yesterday. So if you'd like to know, tune in again at 1 and we'll have a chat about it, shall we?
Yeah, well, I think we want to know.
I think everybody should know. It was but I'll just tell you, it was very disappointing.
How many of those organizational meetings have you seen like that before? Is this just like a one-off, or do they do this all the time?
And that's a good question, because I think the only other organizational session I've seen was in the House, and that was probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe now. So this has been the first organizational session I've seen in the legislature in a while. But I wanted to make sure that I went, because our new speaker, he's not speaker-elect anymore. He was elected yesterday. Our new speaker has put in a whole new set of rules for this upcoming session. So it's not going to be the way it's been before, with a committee, and then it goes from a committee to the floor, or, for a vote. It's not going to be that way anymore. Now there's an extra committee in there, and it's yeah. So transparency just took the big old kapoosh.
Yeah. Typical.
Well, we're almost worse than typical, actually. So I think people need to know what's going on, because if we don't know what's going on, we're not going to come out the wiser in the end. So it's very important to know what's going on, and to kind of see some of the video that happened yesterday, so everybody has a full effect of what happened. So that's
now,
what we'll do.
Is that specifically done by leadership? Is that who does that, or?
Well, leadership gets together and puts together a team that creates the rules. And then they put the rules up. It's HR 2002, I believe is what it was. I'll check to make sure. And so then the members get it. It was just released on Friday. The members get it. They read it. They go through all the rules. And then they have the opportunity to make amendments to those rules during the time that it's brought to the floor after the speaker is elected in that extra session. And so, like I said, Tom Gann had, I think, 5. And those didn't go anywhere. And Jim Shaw had 1, and that didn't go anywhere. So I think it's important to talk about why. Listen to the audio of what happened, because I think that's the most telling, is just watching how these people interact with others. And it just, to me, it was a big slam in the face for the door of the people to the people. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. But guess what? StreamYard worked. And we streamed.
Good.
So there's that. Let's look on the bright side of life. All right. Well, we've got a bunch of people on this morning, and they're not waiting for me to talk about this. They're waiting for our friend Kendra Wesson to come on and tell us a little bit about what's going on the state school board. So I'm going to bring on Miss Kendra so we can have a visit. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. just got back from a big trip to Orlando, and our daughter won a national championship in cheer. So that was a lot of fun.
I saw that on Facebook. Way to go.
I know. They did great. They did great. Cheer is really a sport, guys.
It is. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, my youngest daughter was in cheer for a while and tumbling. And I mean, if you're not in good shape, you can't do that.
Yeah. She's a flyer. We're very proud of her.
Oh, really? She does aerial stuff?
It makes me, it's so I can't even watch practice. It's so nerve-wracking. But yes, she's up in the air and she's fell on her head a few times.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, gravity is great when it's not, but it's not. So.
Yeah.
So how are things going with you?
Everything's going great. Just, keeping learning more and more. It's January 8th. I'm just beginning my 3rd year on the State Board of Education. It's gone so fast.
Yeah.
Fast and furious. And I've enjoyed it very much, the learning. And I'm still chairing the state textbook committee. And that's been great seeing how that process works. And I'm on a couple of other boards, but of course, the Board of Education is the one that is the most prevalent and the one that I spend the most time on.
Well, so tell us a little bit about the state textbook committee.
The state textbook committee is made up of 12, and 9 of them are actual teachers in the classroom. And there's a certain number from each subject. They serve 3-year terms. They go in, and we have a content review team that looks at every book that a publisher puts up for the state of Oklahoma they put up for us to use in schools. And they come together and vote on those books, whether they're accepted or not, to be used, state textbook funds to be used on. Districts can use any book they like, but it's obviously cost effective if they use their textbook funds on, get allocated them by the state on those books instead of using their other funds, because textbook funds can only be used on the books that the state textbook committee approves.
But that's a good point. So teachers could use another book if they wanted, but they would have to pay for it out of their pocket if it's not if it's not one that the textbook committee has okayed.
Well, maybe not out of their pocket, but their school.
Okay.
So it's always best, and that's been really interesting. Every, let's see, I believe that was the 2nd time we have a 3-day meeting, and all of the publishers come in and they give you a presentation of the books and what they cover, and you can ask them questions. And I've noticed a trend that each year the selling point changes. The first year there was a huge selling point on our company's a nonprofit, which teachers really like when a company is nonprofit. I wish that we would go deeper and say, so I'll stay off that subject. But anyways, that was the big selling point in 2023. 2024, interestingly enough, the selling point changed, and it was how many languages the books came in. And one company brandished that our books and our online content come in 52 languages. And it really was eye-opening for me, because I thought, my gosh, can you imagine being a teacher and having to handle 52 languages in your classroom or in your school, your elementary school? So that was a big selling point, was how many languages they came in, which is, consistent with the amount of immigration we're seeing. So I found that really interesting. And then that gave me the thought of, how do we address this? We need kids speaking English. Now, my understanding is a child can learn to speak English in 3 to 4 months, well enough to attend school. But if you're in a classroom with, say, 4 non-English speaking students, how much are the English speaking students being held back, right? To give room for these kids to catch up. How much classroom time is that taking? And I don't know. I just have lots of thoughts about that and ways we could improve in that arena.
Well, I'm curious, how do you feel like we can improve? Because we've seen Ryan Walters say basically we're just going to, you know, take them out of school, you know, if they're illegal, then, you know, boot them out of school, which
I
frankly,
haven't seen him say that, Jenny.
oh, he didn't?
I haven't seen him say that. We haven't.
Oh, I thought he said, I thought that was the big thing. It was that he, okay, maybe I didn't see that. Maybe I missed
Now,
it.
we wanted to get a count of how many so that we could prepare.
Oh, maybe that was it. Maybe
Yeah,
that was it. Because
prepare how many non-English speaking kids are we going to have next year? What resources can we use to help them get up to par so that we're not holding other children back?
well, and I think part of the problem is too, with me anyway, you look at what he says and then automatically the left goes wackadoo and then, you know, says something even you like crazy.
Please tell me you're not falling victim to the mainstream media rhetoric.
Oh, I watch the mainstream media all the time. That's my
No,
go-to.
he hasn't. That has not been a topic of conversation at all.
Okay. Well, in all honesty, I've complained about that for years. I don't know why we have to take taxpayer funds to educate people who are breaking the law in the first place and aren't here legally. So that's been my thing. Maybe I just construed that he said that, but I completely agree that if they're going to be in the classroom, we can't hold back English speaking kids.
Yes.
And that's a real problem for me, considering the fact that we already have such low proficiencies.
Yes, and I've tossed around a lot of thoughts on that. I don't know if we have like a little center to bring them up to English speaking, like a crash course in English that they go to and then they go to the mainstream school. That seems to make the most sense to me, but you know, who knows? To me, you know, my business is streamlining and making things more effective. So it makes me want to do that. It makes me want to streamline it and say, okay, well, this makes sense. Let's send them. Julia's right. Let's send them somewhere, get them English speaking, and then put them in. So I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Having been a classroom teacher, and my philosophy as a classroom teacher, I'll be honest, was, you know, I'm teaching to the majority, you know, and I would do what I could, you know, for people who, but then I was, you know, I was there during lunch. So if you wanted to come in and do something during lunch, you know, I was always happy to do that, or after school. But we've got to worry about educating the majority of kids.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those multifaceted issues that always seem to appear and pop up in education. And we, you know, we are really just trying to do our best and what's best by these kids. And there's a lot of conversation when I go out in the community about Oklahoma being 48th or 49th in education. And I did some research. It was Forbes education rankings. And I believe it was Vermont that was number 10 in education. And the difference between Oklahoma scores and Vermont scores was less than 10 points, with the exception of 8th grade reading. And it was like 11. So that band, you know, someone's always got to be last. Someone's got to be first. When you put it in a numerical order like that, and it's frustrating to me because it feels deceiving. That band is very, very narrow. And being an Oklahoma and an Oklahoman kid, I can promise you that we're just as smart as the kids across the rest of the United States. We have a narrow band to look at. We are moving in the right direction of improving proficiencies, putting tutors in place. There's a huge difference that is often not talked about between rural and urban schools. I mean, it is incredibly different. It's a whole other world. And the state laws encompass schools as a whole. Yeah. And you're getting in the community and you're looking at these schools and you're talking to these superintendents and you realize that they're just vastly different. And that's why local control, I mean, in the beginning of this, I was kind of like, local control, what is that? But now I can see why local control is so important, because our schools are the heartbeat of our community. And the people who are directing our schools, the school board itself, are the bloodlines into that school. So how can we strengthen our local school boards to ensure that policies are being put in place to best empower the kids and their communities to do well? And a good example of this is Murray State College. And I believe I'm probably going to get the name wrong because it's Great Plains Technology Center down that way.
Yeah, I think that's right, actually.
And the Lone Grove and the schools around there, I went and did a tour of all the educational facilities down there, well, most of them. And one common theme in that area of Oklahoma, and I know it happens in other areas, but this is the one that I've toured and seen with my own two eyes, is they have a focus on those kids in school and then directing them into the VOTEC if that's where they choose to go, or directing them into Murray State College. There's a pathway for kids to go into the VOTEC and get what they need to go to Murray State College and share credits and share education, because that area seems to be focused on the whole child and what's best for them to be successful in life. There's sometimes a battle between colleges and VOTECs. There's no battle there. It's all community oriented on how can we get these kids. So there's kids coming out of Murray State College with a nursing degree and $3,000 in debt because they've worked together to help them get things the best way they can, the most inexpensive way they can, best bang for their buck. And I think that is the key to this whole education thing.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing that we could go off on a discussion about is for Chris says, good morning, Kendra and Jenny.
Hi, Chris.
Good morning, Chris. And I'm curious, Michael, you got to get in on this discussion too. So for years, and one of the things that I disagree with Governor Stitt on strenuously is this idea that we educate kids for the workforce. And I'm not really, I think that came from a chamber of commerce somewhere and some kind of notion that the National Chamber of Commerce had. I know that we fought them tooth and nail against Common Core. They were super happy to do that because somehow they felt like that was going to provide workers that were going to be the best for, American companies or whatever that is. And what you said a minute ago is what I've always believed, and especially as a public school teacher and then a homeschool teacher, you educate for the whole child. You don't educate him because you're worried about him getting a job. If you educate him properly and you educate that whole child, then the job comes because the child can is asking the right questions, is doing some critical thinking because we've, given them that opportunity, and they can decide what they want to do, whether it's I'm going to go to college, whether it's I'm going to stay home and be a housewife, whether it's I'm going to go to, trade school, whatever that is, just so long as we're educating the whole child and not pigeonholing them into a spot because they need to be a widget maker.
Right. And I don't know about you, but when I was a senior in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to be. There was a time where I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. I found out you had to have 20/20 vision, which I did not have. Oh, no. And so that crushed my whole thing. But the ability to try out different professions. So at Moore High School in those days, in the 90s, we had a business technology internship program where I went to school half a day and I worked half a day. And that's how I got involved in accounting.
Oh, that's cool.
And I liked the organization and the ability to do that. And I was exposed to it. And it gave me something. I'm not going to say it was like, oh my gosh, my dream job is to be an accountant. But it was, I know how to do this. I can do this. And so this gives me a foothold into something else. And the exposure to different, they're doing machining, they're doing aircraft stuff, cosmetology, they're doing nursing, medical assisting. The exposure to those different fields can help them decide which direction is best for them. And I do agree that we don't want kids to be pigeonholed. I think that's a good way to say that. But we also know that idle hands are the devil's handiwork, right? So we want them producing and doing things. There's a big trend among my friend group with their high schoolers, maybe not my friend group, but people my age with their high schoolers. You'll hear them say, well, I don't want my kids to work. I want them to enjoy their teenage years, and we're going to pay for everything. And I think that is detrimental. The best thing I ever did as a young mom, I had my son at 17. So when he was 16, I was however old that is, you're the math teacher, very young mom. And I remember telling him he had to work. And we lived in Deer Creek in Edmond, and most kids did not work. And so he really disliked me because I wanted him to work. So
Yeah, you were super popular.
I was super not. And I just felt in my soul, I didn't have a real good reason for making him work, but I just felt in my soul that you need to be working. You need to be busy. You need to be making your own money. You need to be learning the value of a dollar, right? And so he came back to me his third year of college, and he was like, Mom, remember when we had that big fight and you wanted me to work and you would make me do all these things? And I thought, here we go. No matter what, you're always the bad guy with your kids, it's always something you did wrong. And he looked at me and he goes, thank you. People in my dorms cannot even do laundry. They can't wash their clothes. They don't know how to run a dishwasher. I'm like the mom to all these kids because you made me be that. And so now he's 31, and I really do believe that we're not giving kids their freedom or childhood by doing that. In that age and time, they're young adults and they're going into adulthood and training. And what a shock it is to children who aren't ever made to work. Or now I know a lot of kids have athletics and full-time sports, and it would be impossible to work. And I get that, but they're at least in a type of work. But what a shock it is to your system to go graduate high school, never having to work, and then have a 40-hour-a-week job with a boss who may not like you, and mom and dad think you're the rock star. It's just it's a trauma. It's a trauma to your child. And, we make them work. We make them do the things they need to do.
And it's a trauma to businesses too.
Yeah.
It is, because I've got my older son went to, we always did that with our kids too. If you're going to live in the house after 18, you have some rules. You either are in school full time, and then you're absolved of a job so long as you're in school full time. But if you're not going to do that, then you have to be working, and you have to be working full time if you're not going to. So we had all of those, And then when my oldest son, who worked part-time while he went to school full-time, and they all put themselves through school. We didn't pay for it. They had to earn the money to do that. And I think that's another thing that's a good thing too, because then they take it seriously. It's like my youngest one, he's not little anymore. He's 20 now. But he was telling me the other day, I said, did you get enrolled finally? And he goes, yeah, but I've only got 10 hours. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. I mean, it's 12 hours and above for full time. So you're going to need to get in there and get another course. And he goes, Mom, do you know what this costs?
Yeah. Yeah, it is unfair with Blake. When Blake was in college, it was, gosh, you could do all 4 years for 30, 40.
Yep.
Now it's hitting 100. I mean, my goodness, what have we done? But that's a whole nother subject. But so the textbook.
Hold on just 1 second before we go back to the textbook. I wanted to go through a couple of these comments. So John says, in my opinion, the non-speaking English need their own classroom, like you said, so they're not holding back other kids. It's too much of a distraction for the other kids when you have to stop all the time for those students. It's not fair to all students. And that's kind of, what you said, and I said both. Julia says, they don't care what the child might want to be. They care about how they might profit off them. We need X number of engineers is the opposite of a child being all God created them to be. And we could actually bump off of what Julia said, because it's 100% to talk about what Sherry said on Friday. Remember that, Michael, where basically she just said, kids are now profit margins. How did she say it, Michael?
I don't know. I think I had to get off before when you guys were talking about that.
Well, it's actually one of the clips I have up. So anybody who wants to go, and basically she just said, we're using kids to make a profit off of, because of all of the apps and everything, all these vendors that are coming in, I need this, we need this for it was just brilliant what she said. So go look that up, and go look that up from Friday. And then Chris says there's no one size fits all solution for educating a child. Everybody learns in a different way and at their own speed. Kids should have the freedom to explore the avenues that they want to pursue. And I agree that they should not be pigeonholed into a one size fits all education system. And then John said pretty much the realistic thing, which is college has turned into a money scam. Because it is. The other thing Sam said to me the other day was, why did they make me take all of this stuff? It doesn't have anything to do with what I want to be. Why did they make me take all of that stuff? Well, so the college can make money, honey. That's why.
Yeah, that's been a huge thing for me too. And there's been several things that happened when Blake was in college. At the beginning, there was Oklahoma's Promise. So you would have Oklahoma's Promise if your family made under so much, and we did at that time. And so it covered his classes and everything. And then I noticed when he moved to OU, all of a sudden they had implemented these fees.
Yes.
They were called fees, activity fees, athletic fees. And so Oklahoma's Promise didn't cover those fees. And I think that someone somewhere, and this is all speculation, someone somewhere had a conversation about, wow, these kids are getting their Pell Grant back to live on because Oklahoma's Promise is covering everything. Let's pull back and change the way we bill, because the statute was written, it only covered credit hours or something. So they created these new charges called fees in different ways, and they attached that to the Pell Grant. And it's just...
They attached the fees to the Kendra.
No. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. So
okay.
So that they could pull more of the student's Pell Grant into the college rather than the student getting all that refunded, because Pell Grants are refundable. At that time, if OLAP, Oklahoma's Promise, covered your college, the Pell Grant would come back to you in cash, and you could use it to live on or however. So they changed the way they billed so that Oklahoma's Promise didn't cover everything, and then they could use the Pell Grant for those uncovered things.
Oh,
and the student would get less back, because it was like, I can just hear them. Like, it was free money sitting out there. Let's figure out a way. Okay, Michael,
you said the word free money.
I'm sorry. Anyway, there's a lot. I've seen it change a lot from Blake, being a young child in 90. Let's see, he would have been in pre-K in 96. So from 96, almost, is that 30 years? I've been dealing with education in various ways almost 30 years, and I've just seen so much change, and that is what has happened.
Well, and I think that what Julia says is right. They want people in debt and oppressed, and I definitely think they do. That is part of what the whole thing is they want people in debt, because then, the Biden administration comes along and says, oh, well, we'll pay for that debt. Well,
who is they? So when we always talk about they want what? This is something I think about a lot. Who is they?
Don't you think it's the government and the people behind the government?
I think that there are a select few who are the they, and I think the rest of them are brought in to some kind of, they feel like they're doing good and are sold on ideas, but their idea is not nefarious. Right.
Yeah, so, I think the day goes way up the chain, in my opinion, Kendra. I mean, it's there's a select few, and it's people in control of the money, the actual printing of the money, in my opinion.
So the rest of the participants maybe are there because they've been sold on one ideal or another. And they would not be a part of the they, but they would be used by the they as pawns.
Useful idiots, you mean?
Huh?
Useful idiot.
That's a great term. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
well, debt is control. I mean, period. Debt. If you're in debt, no matter what kind of debt you're in, you're under someone else's control. Period. I mean,
right. So that's a great way to teach that to your kids is, I'm paying for you to live here. I'm paying for you to eat these groceries. You're going to do X. You're going to mop. You're going to sweep. You're going to contribute. And if you don't, and your adult kids, if you don't want to contribute, you have the option to go out on your own and not have that control over you. And it feels like we're loosening those teachings. We aren't teaching kids. There's nothing free in life. There's nothing free. There's no one going to hand you a attaboy or a trophy at your new 40-hour-a-week job at wherever without you putting in some kind of input. And our thought process feels like it's changing to you owe me rather than I can earn, which also decreases self-confidence. It decreases pride in your work and your ability of yourself. It is a universal weight on society when we can't, when we're being given things and we think we're owed things. It is a disease just as much as anything else.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough, Kendra, I think in today's time, because it is just kind of like a social disease. Like I'm sure you can relate, and I know Jenny can relate. Like when I was coming out of high school, I mean, I had a job from the time I was 15, 16 years old, multiple jobs at the same time. I mean, I went to college. I played athletics. I played golf in college. I worked 2 or 3 jobs. I was by myself, or out on my own, I should say, and just trying to translate all that to my kids. You know, when they come to me with some sob story about, oh, I can't do this or that, I'm like, when I was your age, I already bought my own car. I was working 2 jobs. I was playing golf full time. I was going to school full time. I was playing golf on the golf team. I mean, what do you want me to say? I have no sympathy for you. So even myself trying to hammer my own kids and keep them accountable in some, I mean, it's just so hard because that's just how the culture is now.
Well, Dana says accountability causes trauma now. I'm sure I caused a lot of trauma for my kids because they had chores. But it's true. I mean, it's true.
You know what I hate, Jenny? This is what I hate. I literally have to tell my kids that I'm not their friend. I mean, I tell them that all the time. I'm like, I'm your dad. I'm not your friend. I'm not here to just, be Mr. Nice Guy and say, oh, everything's going to be okay all the time. I said, that's your mom's job. I said, you may not like me for a long time, but it's my responsibility to make you independent. I hate that I have to do that to the extent I have to do it. But if I don't do it, where else are they going to learn something like that?
Well, and John said, when I went to college, I was 47. The college pushed for me to get one loan after another. I kept telling them, no, I don't need them. Why are colleges pushing the students to get loans? Yeah. And you know what? That brings up a really good question you could answer, I think, Kendra. What about this FAFSA nonsense? How is it that a high school kid or a junior has to fill out a FAFSA now? Talk about the government having a whole bunch of information on families that they shouldn't have. What do you think about that?
And there is an exemption for that, right? That you can ask for.
Is there?
I think that there is an exemption you can ask for. I'm not a fan of that either. The FAFSA has been intrusive for a very long time. When I was filling it out for my kids, I remember thinking, this is insane that we're having to say all of these things to get our kids educated. And it's just that data is money piece. Of course, everything's, like we said, everything has a value and data is huge. I wish that weren't so. And kids just, the FAFSA from when Blake had to fill it out to now, even for the younger kids, has been incredibly different and way more intrusive. But I think, again, the intent there, I don't really know what the intent was, but maybe someone thought that it was going to do some good. I don't know.
Yeah. See, I tend to think that again, but then me, I'm a cynic and see government as a bad thing on every level. Just about. I honestly think, especially because the Biden administration was the one who pushed it, and I really honestly think it had everything to do with collecting data and some form of control over kids who were going into college. I can't see it any different otherwise, because I don't see how it helps them. If you could see, oh yeah, that's a really big help, then okay. But otherwise, I don't see what this buys any kids. And if it doesn't buy anything, then why do we have it? And
Well,
Linda says there is an
yes.
exemption.
Hi,
Okay, thank
Linda.
you.
Some of my favorite people watch your show. That's really cool. Yes, I'm pretty sure there is an exemption. And like you said, the legislators are accountable for that. The data collection is incredible. I remember back right after Obama was elected, and I went to the doctor and they took this mental health questionnaire. And I remember sitting there thinking, what is this all about? And to me, my heart felt like it was preemptive to being able to take guns. Because if you put on a mental health questionnaire, yes, if you put on a mental health questionnaire that maybe you'd had an 8 or 9, 10, the highest was 10 depression level, they could come back in 5 years, a new president comes in and they say anyone with over a 5 cannot have a gun. And I was pretty young and I didn't have the knowledge I have now. I wasn't even really in politics. Well, I wasn't in politics at all. And so I just kept thinking those kinds of things. Or when we took our girls to their well child check and the doctor looked at them and said, looked at them, mind you, not me or my husband. They're 7, 9, and maybe 1, and said, do your mommy and daddy have any guns in the house? And the girls just looked at us wide-eyed, and we said, well, tell them the truth, which now looking back, I would have said, don't answer that. But my thought then was, I have nothing to hide. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to be honest. I want my kids to be honest. Like I said, I would not answer that way now. And they said, yes. And they said, well, are they stored away? Are they locked away where you can't get them? And I remember thinking, what in the heck? And then it was, do you wear a seatbelt in the car? Does your mom and dad put you in your car seat? And I was like, this was my second batch of kids. The older kids, we'd never had any of these kinds of questions, and it started to really raise some red flags for me of what business is it of the doctors about these personal family things. You're here to tell me if my kid needs medicine, if they're growing right. You're not here to get in my family circle and say what happens, away from here. And it was really disturbing that they did ask the kids too directly. And then at 13, they would look at the kids and go, do you want your mom and dad in here? Would you like your mom and dad to leave the room so that you can talk to? And I was like, what? I mean, it's really changed. But if you're a new parent, would you notice that? Would you notice that change? Would you think anything about it? If you came in there, you didn't have the older kids to compare to. So there were so many ways the Lord blessed me with eye-opening experiences to understand these things. And I think what I'm saying is, we have to give grace to those people who aren't understanding it yet because they haven't experienced it. Our young parents need help parenting. They need advice parenting. Don't worry about being overbearing or staying out of their business. They need some help with these kinds of things because they don't understand that this is not normal because it's their normal, right? And we know it's not normal. We know it didn't used to be that way. And we know that things have changed drastically, but they really don't. And society has come with this new hands-off approach. So I don't want to be a bossy Aunt Nellie or nosy whatever. And we've been trained to do that. And it's really bad. We need to go ahead and say to that young mom, and I said to my cousin, and it didn't go real well, but he was talking about his son. And I was like, does your pediatrician have any children? And he was like, no. And I was like, so you have a right to say, I don't agree with this, or if you feel something is off with that pediatrician or his advice. And he was like, Kendra, that pediatrician went to school for blah, blah years. And if he tells me something, I'm going to believe it. And my aunt's behind him going, and I was like, no, you can't do that. That is your child. You have the say. And you can't assume that 4 years of pediatrician or however many extra years they go to be a pediatrician gives him all the experience he needs with a human being who have so many different things anyway. But
that's that role reversal that Jenny and we talk about all the time of who's the expert. All these people are the experts. Just because this guy has some extra education doesn't mean he's the expert of your kids. No,
that's a huge fallacy we've fallen into. And I get a lot of razz about that. I've never been a teacher. I had an early childhood center where I thought I was a teacher. I mean, we sang songs and stuff, and I get a lot of razz about that being on the Board of Education, but we don't teach on the Board of Education. You know what we do? We look at efficiencies, the way schools run. Are we doing the right things? Budgets. Guess what? I happen to be an accountant. It's just right down my alley. So I'm right where I'm supposed to be. and it's just really strange, the pressure, like you're saying, that's put on the experts, and who are the experts, and does you can't experience something and become an expert. You have to have a piece of paper with a seal on it.
Yeah.
To be an expert. Nuts.
Those are all great questions. There are a couple of good comments. 1 Samuel 22, and everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him, King David, and he became commander over them. And there were with him about 400 men. So there's that. And then Dana says financial incentives to gather information. That's correct. Again, straight from China, communist social credit scoring. And I never thought about that, about FAFSA. But, don't you think that you could maybe put that in that category?
Well, it'd be a subset of data for it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
To know what kind of, if you wanted to know what kind of families are sending their kids to college, what's the average income, if you wanted to know, all of those things. I think that's good.
I think that's pretty good. John says they sent my kid to the school counselor and drilled him over guns in the home. My wife was a teacher at the same school too. It was not good when I went to the school. And then, don't forget, we had Roberta Lewis on the other day who told us about how basically the state just kidnapped her kid over a post he put on the internet about him cleaning a weapon, just cleaning it, showing people how to clean a weapon. Lisa says the library wouldn't tell me which books I owed big money for late fees because my 12-year-old checked them out and I didn't have the right to know.
Wow. Then they can get the fines from the 12-year-old. Sorry, Lisa.
That was a great one. That's why I love you. Awesome comeback. Atonement cannot be made for a grievance never committed. Teaching white young children they are evil people is denying them. I'm not sure how that quite has to do with what we were talking about, but most of those experts don't even have kids, and that's what Michael you just said exactly, and Kendra both. Yes, unbelievable. We have 100% of the responsibility, though, especially if they deem we've done something wrong. That's right. Kendra, we love you and all you do on the board.
Oh, thank you, Dana.
But yeah, I mean, that's true, Lisa. I mean, it's exactly right. I mean, they'll tell the kid, they won't tell Lisa that her kid has fines, but then they'll tell her that she has to pay them.
Yeah, I don't even have,
how does that work?
There's so many things that have changed. Like, a big question I have is, where did the feminists go? Because the feminists I knew wouldn't want boys in their bathroom.
Oh yeah.
There's many big questions I have, like the Me Too movement. Where did that go? Now you want men in little girls' bathrooms? Me too? Me what? I don't know.
And think about this too. You guys have the state board has started to really get people out of the schools that have been predators of kids. And I know we all really appreciate you for paying attention to that issue, because for so long it's been the victim has been the problem and the perpetrator just goes off, scot-free. So really sincerely, thank you so much for that. But how do we get people to understand that this is actually happening? I mean, we talk about this with Sherry. We talk about this with, our friend Mary at Visit all the time. How do you make people understand that if the kid comes forward and says this is happening, we need to take this seriously?
Well, it's interesting to me. It seems to me that teachers and coaches have a little bit of a pass, because if a kid came to you and said the doctor or a neighbor did these things, you would take it. I think it would be taken differently than if it comes. So I think there is an overall assumption that all teachers and, let's say, school workers are good people and would never do things like that. And it's really, really terrible, because we're looking at 10 to 20 every school board meeting for, I mean, gosh, we had a lady that
10 to 20 every meeting.
It seems like it's been pretty high. We had a lady that tased her foster son in his genitals. I mean, there are horrific things happening, and you're right. If a child comes forward, it's weird because, right, we want children to have all these rights at 12 and 13. Check out the book they want, tell the doctor what they want in private, get birth control, shots, abortions, whatever. But when a 12 or 13-year-old comes to you and says, hey, this coach is touching me inappropriately, all of a sudden they're just a child again. So I can't imagine growing up in this confusing environment of, are we adults or are we kids? Where are we? We're given all this responsibility of over ourselves, but we're not made to be responsible in any way. And I know you guys all see it too. It's coming at them from every direction. I don't have to do chores, but I'm responsible for all these other adult things, right? So it's very conflicting. And I feel like when I was a kid, it was pretty simple. I was the kid. The teacher was the teacher. It was a very strict boundary. I didn't know if my teacher had kids. I didn't know if my teacher was married half the time. I didn't know where they went to college. What I knew was that Miss Russell at Hera Elementary taught me to read very well, and I used an Apple computer with a floppy disk. And what I know is that Miss Shin at Moore High School, with hair down to the ground, taught me English and talked to us about our Oklahoma accent and how it was hard for other people to understand us. Those are the things that I remember from school. I don't remember any inappropriate activities with my teachers or my coaches, and I was always in sports. None of that. But now the line is blurred, and we want to feel safe by sending our kids to school. We want them to be loved. Okay. Love happens at home. Teaching happens at school, because love blurs the boundary for the child. It can blur the boundary for the teacher, who begins to need the children's love as much as the kid needs theirs, or the parent wants the kid to need theirs. And all those boundaries are getting really blurry, right? So now my teacher's my best friend. I know all her kids. I know all their names. And, it's very blurry to me. And I think that those boundaries were there and they were good. And I think that even with the books, do you want a 35-year-old coach reading Gender Queer to your daughter or your son sitting right next to him? Right? Like, you're blurring a boundary. So you're reading a dirty book with a kid, and then the kid's supposed to come back and say, oh, this inappropriate touching is wrong. Well, we just read about it in the book, right? We just read a whole book on nice touching and how good it feels. And these, I'm not even going to say what's in genderqueer, y'all know. And then you tell the kid to have a boundary with that coach. You're setting your kids up, is what you're doing. And that's harsh, but that's what's happening. And these well-meaning people who just want their kids to be loved aren't seeing the way they're setting their kids up.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
I'm giving you a round of applause for that. That honestly, I don't think I have ever, have you, Michael, heard anybody say it that well?
Yeah. Eloquent. That's for sure.
Not like a ramble, but thank you. But that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like you want your kids to be safe at school more than you want them to be loved. You want your kids to be, we've got to have some priorities here.
Well, in my opinion, that's kind of the catch-22 of the whole thing, Kendra, is and I saw this firsthand when I ran for school board and I was knocking doors and talking to parents about the books. They couldn't even accept that these books were in school because they can't comprehend, because school was how it was 20, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. They still think school is that same way. So they can't understand that these relationships happen, this material that they're seeing every single day is just compounding, and allowing those kind of things to happen. And they just can't comprehend, because they still think that it's, the same way you and I didn't know anything about my teacher's politics, their family life, if they're married, divorced, whatever. We didn't know any of that whatsoever. We just had, we did what our teachers said. We respect our teachers. They came in, they taught us, they taught us academics. They weren't teaching us all this social stuff. They were teaching us academics, and then that was it.
Yeah, wow. That same thing for me too. Chris had said, this was a good one. I don't have kids and I'm an expert. I thought that was great. And then Julia, this is 100%. Look at it from the other direction. If you were a child predator, where would you want to work? Yeah. And, Mary said that a whole lot of times too. With almost all parents at work, the teachers have become substitute parents for many kids. And I saw that when I had my first one 40 years ago. I saw that because I was my daughter was a latchkey kid. And I kind of started seeing that. And then when I was a teacher in public school, I saw the same thing. So I saw the same thing that Lisa's describing. So I think what you said, Kendra, I'm going to put a clip together of that and get it out as far as I can, because I think people need to see that perspective. I think they're just not seeing it. And like Lisa said, what began as breakfast and lunch at school is now turned into doing nearly all the things home, offsite. Dana it has just said something, and I'll point out what she says, all the time, is that now we're getting healthcare in the schools. Now we're just getting community schools. We're just getting schools that are doing everything for parents. And where do the parents have anything to do? I can tell you how many parents applaud this without understanding they believe that they own your children, which is very true. They should read the book, They Own Your Kids. And that's true. We should put that up. Parents are brainwashed and don't realize it. And that's the other part of the problem. Yeah. It's just that collective thinking that, this is okay. And Michael, I know you've got like a 30-minute dissertation on that just from having run for school board. And
don't forget, before you read that, Jenny, don't forget what a school administrator literally told me was when the school started feeding and transporting the kids, they became their kids. That's literally what a school administrator told me.
And I think there have actually been, somebody will have to check me up on this. I seem to remember that there was a court case about that. And was it the Supreme Court or a district court basically came back and ruled with the school that so long as this child was at the school, basically the school was their parent and they could do, whatever they felt like they needed to do. Somebody will have to check on me on that. John says the system's broken. It has been for years. Some get by with wrongs while others are booted over nothing, and it lies with administration and personal conflicts between them or school board members and a teacher conflict. And that's true. And, Kendra, before we get off of here today, because you're on the state board, I want you to talk about what you feel like the importance of school board is.
Well, the role of the school board in the local community is the most important thing. If you think about a child's school career, 13 years is a very short period of time. And those children are going to be your future leaders, your future mayor, your future, you want them to have a great education, and that school board is responsible for hiring that superintendent, who's then responsible for taking, on everything else. But it feels like to me, a lot of times the superintendent is in charge and the school board members are subservient. And there were a few big fallacies that people believe that if you don't have kids in that district, you shouldn't be on school board. If you don't have an education background, you shouldn't be on school board. And really, I think the people who don't have kids in the district make wonderful school board members. They don't have to worry about their kids being bullied. They don't have to worry about the emotions tied to their kid being a part of that school or upsetting a teacher or a principal. So I think they make fantastic board members. And I think that being able to, it's just like someone you would want sitting on the board of your company, that you would want sitting on the board of your school, putting in good policy, making sure the financials are where they need to be. The bonding is insane and out of control. The whole community pays for that. The lawsuits, you guys have talked to Sherry and Broken Trust. You know that the lawsuits are coming back to these communities, low-income communities, who are now going to have property taxes raised and lawsuits to pay for via property taxes. It's all spiraling out of control, and there's a whole lot more I could say on the way that that bonding money is spent, but that school board is the most important role. And we need to support good candidates. We need good people like Michael who ran, and anyone else who wants to run, we need to get behind them and help them. Traditionally, they don't have much money given to them. They don't have much help. That's changing. We're working on changing that. I do a lot of school board advocacy. I've done some training with Leadership Institute that school board members can go online and watch. I'm trying to work with them to empower local districts because it is local control. You want what's best for your community and your kids. And the only way to do that is for strong members to be on those boards and say, no, we're not going to do X, Y, Z, or yes, we are, or why are these books in the school? I saw that Edmond voted 100% to keep Glass Castle in the school.
I gotta read you a comment on that too. I finish talking. I'm gonna find it.
You go ahead. I better stop now. But yes, school boards are important.
We'll let him. Yeah.
So Marcus Jones, who's the president at Edmond Schools on the school board, he had a quote. I guess News 4 interviewed him about that 5-0 vote with the Glass Castle. He literally said this. I'm reading what he said. This is in the news. This is a quote. When I read the book, I did not see they were glorifying child predators. I felt like it's a biography and that it was her experiences growing up. That's what he said.
Which are incredibly
traumatizing. It's a biography.
Yeah, which are incredibly traumatizing to kids who have not experienced that. And I don't know how it makes their life more fruitful anyway.
Well, but that was what I was going to say. So I'll piggyback on what you said. These people make me so angry because they think children are adults. They can't possibly sneak down to see it from a child's perspective or try to put themselves in the child's position. It's all about them. It's all about them. Well, I'm an adult and I read it and I thought it was fine. It doesn't matter. You're not the 14-year-old in school, idiot. Guess what? You're not. And it just aggravates me to death because you've got all of these adults saying how porn is just fine. Well, I don't care if you want to watch porn if you're an adult. But we're not going to do it for a 14-year-old child or an 8-year-old child or an under 18 person. That's not the way this is going to work. And these people are absolutely, I think that's the problem with the whole system. They run because it's about them. It's about them doing something. They don't care about the kids. They don't want to get down on their level. They don't want to make it better for them. They're running as an adult. It's all about them. And it's interesting because Julia just said this. If government is to protect our life, liberty, and property, how does a school do that? And that's a great point. And then she says, who cares about a lawsuit if the guilty parties never have to pay? They just pass it on to the public. And that's the thing we've said over and over again here.
And why do teachers carry the insurance? There's a big deal about teachers needing the unions to have the insurance. I asked someone this the other day and I'm in the middle of digging into it. But why is their insurance not, they have to carry the insurance, right? So why is their insurance not being utilized to cover some of these claims? Why is it just the school's overall liability insurance, which typically caps out at $1 million? I'm so confused by that. So I'm looking into that. If either of you want to help me dig into that, but some of that should pass through that teacher's insurance, their individual insurance policy.
Well, and let's look at Kingfisher because this is interesting. Mm-hmm. And I think we've mentioned it a couple of times, but it's still worth mentioning again. There is a county excise board in each county that reviews, and I don't know exactly what all they review. Kendall Sacchieri can tell us when she comes on next week. But they review certain aspects of what schools are wanting that are going to be tied to property taxes. And the excise board, this was published in, I think it was either Oklahoma Voice or the Daily Oklahoman, published the fact that the Kingfisher County Excise Board said, no, y'all have to eat that money. We're not going to pass it on to the taxpayer. That's why Kingfisher was having to get rid of all of those positions because they couldn't afford to do it because they had to pay for this giant suit. But then guess who they kept? They fired a bunch of people and guess who they kept?
Who?
The coach that caused the lawsuit.
No way.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So who's running for Kingfisher School Board?
Hopefully a whole bunch of people.
Mm-hmm. That'll
Oh,
take care of
here's
that.
one from Representative. So
Hi, Grant.
Representative Banning says it's time to move school board elections to align with the House and Senate elections. We need an accurate representation of community values at the ballot box. Amen, sir. Make that happen.
It's not like we haven't tried to run that a couple
For
times,
3
Jenny.
years.
It's on you, Representative. Make it happen.
3 years.
Well,
And we still-
Kendra,
Great
let-
second year. I love Chris Manning. We had some great ones come in. That freshman, they're sophomores now, and they are just all wonderful.
well, Kendra, let me ask you from your perspective, being state school board, and we're just talking about local school board. Who do we ultimately point the finger at, like, for those proficiencies? I mean, is it the local school board? I mean, how much of a part does like the OSD, play in that, as far as like the total proficiency for the schools?
Are you talking? I think I need a little more.
Well, like the reading and math proficiencies. Who's ultimately responsible for that? Do we point the blame at the State Department of Education? Are they more to blame for the poor performance, or is it literally the local school board who's in charge of their school district? Is that who we blame? Who do we blame for being 48?
Well, I think the blame can go all over the place. I think that you could say maybe some parents need to do a little more homework. I think you could say maybe some teachers need to focus on teaching and not what we know that they should not be focusing on. I think that there's blame to go just all over the place. I don't know that you could pinpoint it down and dial it in like that. Our state, I mean, like I said, the bandwidth of that is not real wide. But what was successful for your kids? Just think about those things. Like for our kids, we had an expectation of certain grades. I think if parents across Oklahoma were to take their children actually any age, pick a book up that's on their reading level and ask their kid to read them that book, I think it would be eye-opening. And I think more of that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I've often wished I could just get everyone to do that. Just take a book and ask your kid to read it. You'll see exactly what needs, where they're at and what needs to happen from there.
And I think that's 100%. But I also think the other thing that we did was we read to our kids every night. I mean, up until the time that they were 15 years old, we read some kind of book with them every single night. And it's hysterical because you can pick any of them. You give them a test. It's kind of sad. You give them a test, they'll blow the top off of the English. They may not do great in math, but they'll blow the top off of the English. And I do think it makes a huge difference. I mean, I think when people sometimes say that, I have a pretty good way with words. Well, I had an English teacher for a mother, right? And I read tons. And that kind of thing makes a huge difference in the ability of anybody to become educated. Because if you pick a good book, not a trashy book, but if you pick a good book, a classic book, and you try to get through it and you do what I always adjured my kids to do, my kids would come to me and go, I don't know what this word is. And I would go, are you on this thing? Do you know you might even type in that word and see what comes up? I mean, you just have to, get them to think in a different way. Julia nailed me here just a second ago. She said, there is a law that needs to be in place where the school boards can be held accountable. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
But she said something just a minute ago. Wow, we've got a lot of comments today. What did she say? There it is. She nailed me. She said, you should care if an adult watches porn because it leads to the depravity we're talking about. And that's true. I mean, I just tend to be a libertarian and say, you do you. But I mean, I agree. That's correct. My opinion of the Tulsa School Board is that they are in a job that's way over their head. The district is too big for proper oversight. And, that's a good question, or that's a good comment, actually, Kendra, because we expect parents to be on the school board and we push for them to be, but then sometimes I don't think we give them the proper training to really understand what they're seeing. What do you think?
I think that's exactly right. And some of the training that's out there isn't proper.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big piece of this. And that's why I've done some of the work with Leadership Institute to get the right trainings out there, to let them know what their responsibilities are. The estimate of needs that goes to the county board. People need to understand how school funding works if they're going to be on the school board. And it is so complicated. As an accountant, even my eyes crossed the first time I looked at school funding. I've taken classes with the State Board of Education ladies up there to help me understand school funding. And I have to say, I'm still a bit fuzzy. I don't know if it's designed that way on purpose, but it certainly feels like it could be simpler.
I think it is. I tend to think it is.
But how much of teaching? So you asked me about proficiencies. Do parents have a responsibility and a role to teach their kids at all? Or is it all left
Well,
up?
I would agree. Yeah, 100% yes. I mean, ultimately, it's my kids. I should be responsible. But I'll tell you, Kendra, in today's time, you literally can't survive a regular life you could have 20 or 30 years ago if both parents aren't working almost full time. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many people that I know literally maybe spend 1 or 2 hours a day with their kids, and that's it. I mean, we don't live in the same 1980s or 90s, school system that we did where you could survive. I mean, yes, at my house, we made a conscious decision to sacrifice, and my wife would stay home with the kids all the way through school. She's not going to work. I'm going to be the only worker. So we made that decision. But most people, I mean, you almost can't survive if you don't have two parents. So, how much more can a parent do? I mean, it's a double-edged sword. There's no doubt about it. And we've got to figure out a better way to do it. But yes, parents should be much more involved, but maybe they don't even have the time. By the time they do everything else, they're completely worn out. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, we utilize some ideas like when we're at a restaurant and the tip is being handled, our kids do the tip. They have to order their own food. We don't order for them. We read signs going down the highway. We memorize car tags. I think there's just, and Michael, I totally agree. I got sold the girl boss thing, and I work like crazy. My husband and I both love to work, and I totally agree with you there. I just, I think that it's back to helping people, young adults especially, parent. They need some mentors. They need some ideas. I feel like we've abandoned the 20 to 30-year-old parenting range. We want to let them do it themselves. We don't want to interfere. And they need us. They need us to help with some of those things that we know from experience in a kind and a sweet way. And there's just interjections you can do as a parent to help with those things. And it feels like, to me, in the education system, all of the blame of that is happening with the teacher. And when I had
let me interject here and throw in a couple of comments that we've had. So Linda says Kingfisher has a history of doing that. A coach and my niece had a relationship, and they got ultimately married. Okay, yeah. Then John is talking about exactly what you're talking about. He said, being a sub, it's shocking when a parent tells you you're not doing your job if my kid fails a test. Yeah. And that's exactly what you just said. And then Dana said, and this is great, this is kind of what we did too. Amen. Dinner at the table is a good start to bring family back together. No phones, and talk to your kids. I mean, it's funny because we did that, especially during middle school, because I taught middle school for years. I'm telling you, people, middle school is when your kid is going to go flying off into outer space if you're not careful what's going on. And so in middle school, all the way through 10th grade, once they started getting their license and they had other things to do, it was just too hard to do it as a rule. We would do it most of the time, but not as a rule. But we had dinner together. Sometimes we read the Bible. Sometimes we had an ethics lesson. Sometimes we just watched Dancing with the Stars together. I mean, whatever it was, the kids will often come back and go, remember when we did that, and we watched it, or we read the, I mean, you just have to take the time to do it. Nobody can do it for you. Janice says, we've been taught as a society that the schools are the experts. The system took until parents have been raised to believe it's the school's everything is the school's job. And she said TV and internet has raised 2 or 3
Yeah.
generations, and that's an absolute truth. And Lisa says, unless a single parent is working fast food, which is sometimes the case, the biggest hurdle to homeschooling is overcome when one parent desires it more than they desire a new phone each year, or yearly vacations, or designer clothes, manis, and jewelry. And you know what? I think that's kind of the big thing. And I always get kicked for saying it, but I don't really care. I have thick skin, so kick away. You afford what you want to afford. You just do. And you put your time where you want to put your time. And if you want to put your time into a job because you want to have a bigger home, or you want to have a boat, or you want to have a vacation, and that's where you want to put your time, do not put that blame on a parent or on the state school board or on Ryan Walters. He's got lots of problems, but that isn't one of them. Don't do it. At least have the self-reflection enough to be able to say, you know what, my priorities are screwed up. We need to move out of this bigger house. We need to get a smaller house so I can stay home. This is all doable. And for some, it absolutely isn't. I would agree there. Unfortunately, we're phasing out the middle class and putting everybody into poverty with the amount of taxation and everything else that's going on. But by and large, there are more people that could do that and have a parent stay home. They just choose not to. So,
well, and we're closer to that generation that we had grandparents that lived through the 30s, right? My grandma washed her aluminum foil. Paper towels were cut into fourths. Ziploc baggies were washed, right? We're closer to that. Today's kids are, I think I asked my husband the other day, I was like, is it that people are making less money, or is it that people are more bougie? And bougie, I'm sure you guys all know what that means. And he just laughed at me. And I said, I feel like the expectation for today's kids is to be able to DoorDash. Today's kids spend more on food, restaurant experiences than they do on clothing. Whereas our generation would spend on clothing and tangible items, right? And it's just a change. It's a complete shift in culture. And the spending is so out of control. And yes, the kids are paying the price for that, I think is what you're trying to say in a roundabout way, is our kids are suffering for these spending habits that have come about, and you have to work more to be able to spend like that. The kids are expecting it now because every kid in school has AirPods, Uggs, iPhone. Good grief. Your kid's walking around with $1,000 phone. My first car was $1,000, and that was expensive. So it's really changed.
I think Michael's got you beat. I think his was $600.
Michael, well, he's thrifty. I'm telling you.
Linda said, and this is true, and I think this is an important thing to make a point about. My great-granddaughter was always on the superintendent honor roll, made A's in all subjects, but her papers were full of mistakes, misspelled words, punctuation, capitalization, run-on sentences, etc. That's why I started homeschooling. And I think that's the concern that we had when I had I did have a meltdown over the fact that somehow the grades were being changed. And you can address that here in just a second. That the grades were being changed to make it seem like schools were getting better scores than they were. Now, this is what's been reported in the media. I don't know. That's why we need to ask you about that, because this has just been what's reported in the media. But I will say that that's part of the reason why we started homeschooling. My kids were getting A's on papers, and I'm like, this wasn't spelled right. How did you get an A on that? Well, you only wrote a paragraph and a half, and she asked you to write a whole page and you got an A. I mean, all of these things, it's just, but then again, as a teacher, if I didn't give out A's, I had parents going, how come my kid didn't get an A on this? Why didn't my kid get an A? My kid has to have an A, or they can't make it on for they can't play basketball
Right. Sports, whole other issue. Yeah.
Janice said, a teacher told me yesterday that he has a new group of sophomores who don't know their address.
Shanna.
Shanna, Y'all are laughing. I'm speechless. That's the worst thing I think I've ever read.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. Kendra, we're a more disposable society along with one that doesn't
yes.
know how to sew on a button like they need to. And that's right.
Yeah.
All of that collecting data again. Just an FYI, Jenny, I keep laughing when you talk. There's an echo. Uh-oh, sounds like there is. And it's coming from you, Kendra. Your microphone is feeding back. So I may end up shutting you off when you talk because it stops it.
I don't know why.
Lisa says we were in a co-op once where my daughter was the only student who turned in an assignment. The teacher called her an overachiever in front of the other students. We left that day. So please explain. Oh, Julia says she doesn't have feedback. I can hear it in my ear.
I can hear it.
Yeah, that's so
I can't
weird.
hear it. I'm sorry.
So explain to us, did you find anything out? Do you know anything about this whole notion that cut scores have been changed?
Oh, all right. So cut scores. It seems that the media has reported that the Department of Education had something to do with cut scores. And I just want to let you guys know, Statute 70, Section 1210.541 points A and B gives that responsibility to OEQA, and specifically the commission, it is called CEQA, are responsible for setting the cut scores for the state of Oklahoma since about 2013. So report cards, the Oklahoma report cards have 7 different data entry points. It's not just the grades there. Assessments are one of those points. They have more than 7, but 7 minimum. Academic achievement, academic growth, chronic absenteeism, which has been a huge issue since COVID. It's been really tough for some of those COVID babies to get back into school.
Yeah.
And with the ability for them to be on a cell phone or an iPad all day and stay busy, parents probably aren't as excited about getting them back in school because they're not driving them crazy. English language proficiency assessment, post-secondary opportunities in graduation. So I think the conversation was that the cut scores were moved so that everything would appear to be better under Ryan Walters' administration. So prior to in 2023, between 2023 and 2024, we added additional 127 sites to have more accountability and more transparency among schools. So 1,737 sites currently. A site would be like Dibble Elementary School versus Dibble High School. It's not a district, it's a site where a school, because we have like 540 so districts. But the difference in A's, the A's went up 0.66% between 23 and 24. The B's went up 0.02% between 23 and 24. The C's went up 1.66% between 23 and 24. D's and F's, the D's went down 1.72% and the F went down 0.63. So as you can see, we're talking a percentage point or less. And that was determined by OEQA. So it's been really tough to see those kinds of things being reported by journalists who probably need to take a gander at the state statutes before they put out articles, because that's not what happened at all. The goal of the Board of Education and the Department of Education has remained to try to figure out a way to make this huge wheel of moving parts, and it's intricate. Just the textbook committee, there are so many pieces that are statutorily required that you and I would be like, why spend? But, it's just like anything else. The rules, the lack of rule following is what creates more laws and rules, right? So it's become this big monster, and I can't even begin to think of a way to streamline it. So I can't imagine an administration that changes from Republican to Democrat just about every 4 to 8 years.
Yeah.
They're reinventing the wheel the second they go into office. So you come into a situation where a Democrat's been in charge for the last 8 years. If you think there's someone there handing you the instruction book, there is not. So you're starting over with a staff that's not yours, basically a whole department that is not yours. And you're going to come in and start laying down the law and changing things, and they're going to be resistant. So I'm really proud of the changes that have happened. We were one of the first state boards of education to stand up against boys and girls bathrooms. We did not agree with Biden's Title IX policies. And those are the kinds of things we're interested in, is keeping our kids safe, getting them educated the best way we can as Oklahomans. And I've enjoyed it. It's controversial. The media loves to pick on certain things because they honestly, we talk about data collection. Their data collection is clicks. And the more clicks a person gets, the more they talk about them. So while they're talking and foddering in the background, we're doing some real work to implement change in Oklahoma's education system. But it still doesn't matter what happens at the state level if the local level is not going to do what needs to be done for those kids. If the school board members aren't going to stand up, request rigor, request accountability within their community because they're bros with the superintendent or whoever, then it's not going to change a darn thing because it can't be implemented at the state level. It's like asking President Trump to come into Oklahoma and take over and do things. We don't work that way. We're ground up. So local school board is where we have to be if you want to see these changes. You can pick at the State Department of Education every day of the week. It doesn't matter. If your local district isn't going to do what needs to be done, it's not going to happen.
Well, I don't know how much further to go. And Robert just said something. I can hear the feedback on you too. It sounds like chipmunks are doing. And you know what's funny is it sounds like that in my earpiece too. Yeah. It sounds like little chipmunks in there arguing. It's so funny. But John made the point. It's not just from Dem to Rhino, or Republican. It's Rhino to Republicans too. I mean, we have so many problems with the same. Hold on. This is a good question. Are the school taxes set up to prevent overspending? Debt in schools driving higher taxes. Are bonds ever rated for the ability of current taxes to pay the interest, or do we count on raising taxes? Those are great questions. Do you know those? Otherwise, I'll have to throw them to Kendall when she's on next week.
I think Kendall is your expert in that. Okay. But a school can only be bonded a certain percent. And it seems to me that it works in favor for a school to stay bonded because they're exempt from some things like classroom sizes, which I just found out recently, which was devastating to me. So, I think at this point I would just about vote no on every school bond unless they could absolutely bring a good reason that it needs to be done. Here in Norman, we have a $14 million activity center that was just purchased that sits empty 85% of the time. I don't know. That's just not a good use of funds. If we want education to be better, we have to put education first. And I love the performing arts. I love sports, but, and it's not a popular opinion, guys, but education needs to be education.
No. What? I was writing.
Unless my daughter wins a national championship, then I'm fine with it.
Well, in all honesty, we had a pretty good segue out there, I thought, because, you were talking about the absolute importance of the school board to local everything. I mean, to everything. And I just, gosh, Kendall, I just don't know. Michael and I, Julie and I, we have all tried, for years to get people to sit on school boards. And I don't know what it is that people just seem resistant to the idea. I don't know, Kendall. I don't know what Kendra, I don't know what you do. What do we do?
I think just educating and having shows like this that empower people to realize the importance of those positions is a huge piece of it, and combating the fallacy that older folks who don't have kids in the system don't belong there. That they would be the wisdom that they bring to the table and the knowledge. And I'm just incredibly stumped that anyone thinks they don't have a place in such a role that would make such a change in their community. So I think we just, educating, respect each other, talk about these things, open discourse. we just keep plugging away. Gideon's army was very small.
Well, and that's a good point. Lisa says it's so much easier just to let other people raise our kids. And unfortunately, I do think, and Julia, as usual, voluntary taxes, problem solved. I completely agree. I don't know. I guess you're right. We just have to keep pounding the gavel on that bench and just saying, if you really are concerned, if you really want something to change, if you want to see things get better, you have no choice but to get involved. And I guess you just say, if you're not going to get involved, shut up about it. I mean, keep your mouth closed. I don't know what else you do, because I don't know. Oh, this is my favorite one. End compulsory education. Robert and I have a group that we text in, and Janice is the same thing. The thing that I think all of us want more than anything, this little group of us, and I would hope everybody else would, I would like to see there be an end to compulsory education. So you can't force a kid to be educated if they don't want to. And here's what will end up happening. People will say this, because I've heard the arguments when I say it before. They'll say, but Jenny, that'll put kids on the street and we'll have so much more crime and then won't be dead. And they have 100 different reasons why you couldn't just get rid of the law providing compulsory education. But here's the thing, even if you get rid of the law that provides compulsory education, 99.9% of people are still going to educate their kids. I mean, it doesn't matter. But I think what getting rid of the law does is it stops a whole bunch of other laws from being implemented, and for parents to actually believe that they can take over the role, or maybe it forces parents to take over the role of being involved, even if they don't feel like they can educate their own kids, being involved in educating their own kids. I don't know. Thoughts? Ending thoughts? Parting thoughts?
Well, that was a large pill to swallow. That would be a constitutional change,
Yes.
not just a law. It'd be a constitutional change.
Yep.
But I think that we're stuck in the here and now, and what we can do here and now is empower our school boards to do the work that they need to do. The good old boy system is very much alive in Oklahoma, and that's not what's best for our kids.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can make moves in that direction, plugging away with our small steps.
Yeah. Boy, there are a whole bunch of people on here. I'm not going to put them all up, but they're all like, get rid of literacy remains 80% in the U.S. since the introduction of compulsory education. Forces them to parent their own kids. I mean, lots of people on here like the idea of getting rid of
the literacy rates are lower than they were in the 1950s. Like, they're incredibly low. And I'm sure some of that has to do with this smartphones that make you dumber. But yeah, it's definitely down.
Well, and I do agree. I mean, I was just reading, Ralph says that we've just proved that there are chipmunks running around in my head because people can hear the chipmunk noises.
Sorry,
it's okay.
I thought maybe Kendra was playing a game and she just put her phone down and it was just still going. Like the game was just still going.
It's total silence here.
It's just feedback. No, it's just feedback. That's why, especially when we have people on, I try to get people to wear an earphone, because if you wear an earphone, it prevents the sound from coming out of the mic and feeding back into the computer and then back out. And when it does that, it makes this goofy noise, or sometimes it'll leave an echo. It's like, wow.
Next time I'll be sure, guys, that I have the proper equipment. I have a little microphone. I was just too lazy to get it out.
Yeah. What have we said?
I was waiting on the school district to do it. I was waiting on one of my teachers to come fix it.
That's so funny. Jana thought it was my sheep in the background. Could have been. Well, Kendra, honestly, we've enjoyed having you on so much this morning, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being a part of the board, and how, and just honestly, if nobody, if people wondered ever, for whatever reason, wondered why is Kendra Wesson on the state school board, if they've watched this podcast and still have that idea, I don't know what to think about them, because you are one of the most articulate, thoughtful, commonsensical people I have been blessed to know. And I mean, you know me, I don't blow hot air. And it's really true. And I think we're really blessed to have you in that position, Kendra. And, just thank you. And always know, we try to be a resource for you here. And anything that you want to talk about, you have an open platform here. We're just, very, very proud of you.
Well, this battle started a long time ago, and I know you were at the forefront of it. And I was thinking earlier about how I'm always safe to express myself with you, even whenever we disagree. And believe me, Jenny and I disagree on some things. And I've had conversations with her in airports and settling her down from whatever. And she's been a safe space for me and a sounding board. And Michael is awesome, as you guys know. And these people in the battle, it is exhausting, and it's hard sometimes to get up and battle another day. And I'm proud of you guys for hanging in there, because this is not going to fix itself. It's really not. And the Lord put me on that school board for a reason, and I plan to do whatever he asks of me. So.
Well, and I'm sure that's part of the other reason that makes you, so great at what you do. I mean, I just feel like public servants that are servants of the Lord are always going to be the best public servants. So,
Yes. I agree.
All right. Well, it is so nice to have you, and we will be back in touch with you again, I'm sure certainly soon. And then, like I said, anytime you want anything, let us know.
Thank you for that. Thank all you guys for watching.
All right. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All righty. Bye-bye. Just another phenomenal, I wish she hadn't left so fast, but she has the ability to say things so succinctly and eloquently. I mean, don't you agree?
Oh yeah, she has a ton of just everyday life experience. That's what I like so much about Kendra. She's kind of been there, done it all. She's seen it from all these different aspects, and I mean, she has a way to combine it all and say it.
Yeah. Ralph said, speaking of how she got on the board, I'd like to know at some point in time how that happened. She was appointed by Governor Stitt, is how she got on the board. But I do believe that I do believe she's making a difference there. And I do believe, I don't know. I just think the world of that woman. I just have all faith and confidence in her. And that should say something to people who know that I'm a giant cynic and mostly distrust everybody. So, I mean, it should say something. The fact that I just think the world of that woman. She's just
Kendra's not there just for the title, just for the title, like most of these people are.
Correct.
I mean, I can't imagine. I should ask Kendra just how many people reach out to her on a daily basis. I bet it's pretty overwhelming, the amount of people constantly reaching out to her to tell her this, or I need this, or whatever. I bet it's much more than we think.
Oh, I can't imagine that and that's the other thing that I think is so important to point out to people. She does this in addition to a full-time job, addition to raising she still has a kid at home. So, I mean, I guess I know that there are people like, us that can do multiple things and are okay with doing that and have the energy to do that. But I think when you look at people like Kendra, and then you look at people who complain and they don't realize and they don't want to get out of their headspace long enough to say, well, I can do this. I can make that effort. I don't know if it's they don't want to. I don't know if it's they feel like they simply can't or they're not equipped. I don't know how that works, but I don't know how you can't look at Kendra and think, my gosh, I mean, she does all of that. Why can't I do the same thing? And we just don't have enough people, I think, like Kendra, who have that servant heart kind.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what she has. She just wants to be, you know, a servant to the people of Oklahoma and certainly the kids of Oklahoma. So we may be embarrassing the heck out of her. I don't know, but so we'll stop. But I just do think that, you know, pay attention to what goes on at board meetings, and pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to what's going on at your own school board. When are the elections? We might just say that, Michael, because you've got a candidate that you'd like to interview on the show for Edmond, right?
Yeah, we've got Colonel Jim Putman, who's going to run for Edmond School Board. And I think that election is like that second Tuesday in April.
Okay. Yeah, I got to put it up.
I don't know the date of it, like the 8th or 9th or something.
I'll go put it up. I'll go make a little thing out of it and put it up today. But yeah, I mean,
well, we asked Marcus Jones for an interview, which he declined. We also wanted to do a forum or some kind of debate for some of these school board elections too, and Marcus Jones declined that also.
Yes, and I really think it's important to point that out. Okay. Is there anything you got on your plate before we get off of here for today?
No, I'm really glad we had Kendra on here. It's just, I think it's another example of you know, people taking personal responsibility. You know, we've talked about it.
She's so uplifting.
Yeah.
I mean, she's just uplifting. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good start to any Wednesday when Kendra comes on, because she knows all the problems, but yet she's still, you know, uplifted about it. And that helps us remember that we can do things. We just have to do them.
Yeah.
So on Friday, guess what?
No chipmunks.
I don't know. According to Ralph, they're running around in my brain. So I don't know. Maybe not. No, we have a great guest on Friday. We have a guest who's going to be on from an organization called CFACT. And CFACT is one of the first organizations that was created. It's a national organization. His name is Peter Murphy. He's going to be on to talk about the green scam. And CFACT has been pushing back on this for, well, since
a long time.
Yeah, long time, 1986 or something, way before we even started thinking about the green agenda. They've been pushing back on it. And guess who's on their board? I loved this when I looked them up. Lord Monckton is on their board. And if you don't know anything about green, whatever you want to call it, Lord Monckton has taken on, globalists, one-on-one about global warming and climate change and all of that. And he's amazing if you ever get to listen to him. And he's on the CFAC board. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. When I wrote my article in the Federalist about what happened with Governor Stitt signing the MOU for more green stuff from Denmark, he reached out to me after that article. And I said, oh my gosh, would you like to be on our show? We'd love to have you. So he's going to be on Friday. So please stay on. Please be with us on Friday and tell other people, because it would be so important for us to be able to get that information out and under the noses of legislators who, can see it if they're tuning in, or if, constituents are sending it to them. So please make sure to tune in on Friday, because we'd love to have your comments and let you hear what Peter Murphy has to say about the green agenda.
Yeah, I'm excited. One of my favorite subjects.
I know.
The green scam.
No kidding. All right. And then I will be live at 1:00 this afternoon to talk about what happened yesterday in the House.
Did you say 1 or 1:30? I thought you said 1:30 earlier.
1.
Oh,
1:00. I try to do them at 1 if I'm going to do them, because, it gives it some continuity. So we'll try to stick with 1. And I will have I'm uploading some video to be able to use, so you can hear that. So thank you so much for being with us. We had a wonderful audience today, and we had so many great, the time on Friday is 9 a.m. Same channel, same time, same bat channel.
Yeah. Same bat channel.
Wasn't that what they used to say?
Yeah, I think
Same
so.
bat time, same bat channel. Michael, always love having our podcast together. Always love that. So I will see you again at 9 on Friday.
Sounds good.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, everybody, for being with us. We had a great show today, and thank you for all your comments and for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And then we'll see you again either at 1 this afternoon or at 9 a.m. on Friday. So thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.